So, we've had 3 new Doctor Who anniversary specials and a new Christmas special, and now that I've seen them all, it's time to give my thoughts on them. So let's go. First one, The Star Beast, based on an old Doctor Who comic book from the 80s. This is the episode that gives us the proper return of David Tennant, who's playing a new Doctor, though let's be frank, he's basically just the 10th Doctor again, just with a different number, and Catherine Tate as Donna Noble. To get to them first, David Tennant, like I said, he's basically just playing the 10th Doctor again, but I will admit, it's nice to have him back. The 10th Doctor is by no means one of my favourite Doctors, but he is very good, and I think in terms of an actor, David Tennant can almost do no wrong, so I was very happy to see him back, and it was a great entertainment to see him going back into his old 10th Doctor shtick again. Catherine Tate also does a great job as well. I can't go too much into spoilers on this because I want to keep it a surprise for those who haven't seen it yet, but her performance is really good in this because she has to act as sort of like there's another person inside of her trying to get out, but the surface person doesn't want to acknowledge it. And you actually do get that feel with her. You can see that there's another side of her fighting to get out. But regardless of that, she's still the same entertaining character that she always was. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Catherine Tate's work, as an actor, she's fantastic and she does a really good job here. And her daughter, Rose, and the fact that she's called Rose really doesn't play into anything, it's more or less just a little bit of an in-joke. But she was also a fun character, and she also plays into the ending of The Star Beast, which, while a little silly and a tad fanficky, it was quite nice, and it's good to give a new character some moments. We also got to see Donna's mum return, and she was also really good. I think out of all the various mums during the Russell T Davies one, she was probably one of the better ones. She was the one who felt like she had the most personality, she was the most well-rounded character, and even though, yeah, she was a little bit annoying, she wasn't nearly as annoying as Jackie or Martha's mum, so I did quite like seeing her again. But in terms of the plot, as I said, it's an adaptation of an old story from the 80s, but with a few new elements brought in. And in that regard, I think they did a fantastic job with it. This is the most fun I've had with a Doctor Who episode in a very long time. The Meep, which is the new character and the titular Star Beast, is amazing. It's one of the most fun characters we've had in Doctor Who, and the effects for it are amazing. You really believe it's there. I did worry that they were trying too hard to lean into making it like the Doctor Who equivalent of Baby Yoda, but no, what they do with it is really, really clever. I can't give too much spoilers like I said, but trust me, it's a lot of fun. And Miriam Margolyes does an amazing job doing its voice. I always love Miriam Margolyes in everything, but she does an amazing job here. And also I mentioned the effects. While most of the effects are quite good, there are a few effects that do look quite crappy, but this time it almost seems like it's deliberate, like it's deliberately made to look cheap and unreal. And I actually quite like that. One of the problems I've had with Doctor Who recently and the BBC in general is that it feels like they're trying to be too cinematic to try and appeal to the international audience, particularly America, and it just loses that genuine charm that they had in the past. It just feels very synthetic now, and I don't like it. But with this, while they're still using modern cinematography techniques, the crappier effects that are made to look deliberately crappy is kind of bringing back that old charm to it, and it's really good, and it really did make me feel like the older Doctor Who stuff from the old Russell T Davies era, so I really appreciate that. And also in terms of the aesthetical things, the inside of the TARDIS looks pretty cool. I like that it's very bright and it looks very old school. Nothing too much to say, but it is a nice design, and I love the sonic screwdriver, which looks like it's made out of composite elements from the previous sonic screwdrivers, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th, which I really like, and it's a good way to kind of tie it back into the anniversary aspect of the show. But yeah, Star Beast was really good. I definitely recommend it. Next was Into the Wild Blue Yonder. This one, even though it is a good episode, I wasn't quite as into it as I was with the Star Beast or even the following episode. This one is more of an isolated adventure, which is fine. Normally that works quite well with Doctor Who, and it reminded me a lot of Russell T Davies' Midnight episode, which I'd argue is actually his best episode he's ever written. But that episode worked. This one doesn't quite work as well. It definitely has good atmosphere, and once again some effects that look unbelievably silly, but actually do kind of work in being disturbing. But yeah, it feels like a one joke premise, or just sort of one scare premise that gets stretched out for a little bit too long. It's not bad, it was quite entertaining, but like I said, I didn't find it quite as entertaining as the other 2 anniversary episodes, so it is good, but I don't think it's essential, and other than one minor plot point, it isn't really played into the overall narrative of the specials that much either. And finally, the giggle, which this was a really good episode as well. I didn't quite like it as much as the Star Beast, particularly because of the ending, which I'll address in as subtle a way as I can, but it was a very good episode, and it brought back some old elements from the series and some previously unexplored areas in a very clever way. This also introduced Neil Patrick Harris as the new incarnation of the Celestial Toymaker, which I don't think that's going into spoilers. He was advertised as being the Toymaker, and you can tell from the very first shot that that's the character he's playing, so yeah. He's playing the Celestial Toymaker, and he is amazing. I love Neil Patrick Harris. He's one of my favourite actors, and he really pulls it off really well here. Admittedly, the fake German accent he was doing throughout most of the episode did feel a little bit hokey. I get the idea that he's going through different accents to show that he's a celestial being with many identities and lots of aspects to his personality, but I think he held on the German accent a little bit too much. But besides that, he was a lot of fun to watch, and he really reminded me of a kind of very over-the-top character that you might see in maybe a Marvel movie, particularly a James Gunn one. The Celestial Toymaker was already quite an entertaining villain, particularly because he was played by Michael Gough in the original, but here he is just so much fun to watch. We also get the return of Bonnie Langford's Mel, and while I will admit I'm not a fan of Mel or Bonnie Langford, here she actually does a really good job. She's a lot more toned down, she's much less annoying, and she's very useful, and Bonnie Langford herself does a really good job with the role, so kudos there. I really did actually like that part. And also with the fact that they use Stocky Bill, aka that ventriloquist dummy head that was used for the first TV broadcast in the 1920s, as a major plot point and a sort of villain. That was a genius idea. I have no idea why Doctor Who's never gone to that before, but this was really good. It reminded me a lot of The Idiot's Lantern, which was actually a Mark Gatiss story, but I get the feeling Gatiss might have helped out on this because a lot of it does have his kind of flair to it. So yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this episode, with the exception of the ending. Like I said, I can't go too deep into it because it would give away major spoilers, but well, you probably already know by now that the Doctor does regenerate in this episode because the Christmas special has a different Doctor. But the way they did it this time was very different, but not in a good way. It reminded me a lot of the Meta-Crisis stuff from The Parting of the Ways in Series 4. And while I wasn't a fan of that, at the very least it was given a believable explanation. Here, there's no explanation, and not only does it seem really cheap, but it also just makes it seem like Russell T Davies can't get over his man crush on David Tennant. Yes, I get it. David Tennant is amazing and sexy, but just let him move on already. He's had enough of this franchise, and quite frankly, we've had enough of him. We want to see new stuff. Just let it go, Russell T Davies. Just let it go. I'm also not a fan of the way in which the Toymaker is defeated, which again I can't go too deep into, but at the very least, most of the time when he was defeated in previous outings, he was outsmarted. This time it just feels like he was an idiot, but that's more of a minor issue, to be honest. But yeah, despite that, it was entertaining, and it did give me hope for the new Doctor, because the moments he has in the episode, he was very entertaining. So yeah, quite a good episode. And now that leads us to the new Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. This episode feels distinctly different from the other ones, not just because there's a new Doctor and companion, but because the previous 3 episodes, while they were using modern techniques, it did feel like a callback to the old Russell T Davies days, in a slightly more updated way. This one definitely feels like it's trying to do something completely new, and I actually commend them for that. They could have easily just gone back to the old status quo, but no, they're trying something different. And for the most part, I think it worked out quite well. I wasn't blown away by it by any means, but I do think that there is a decent foundation for a new Doctor Who going forward with this, and I'm excited to see that. So we've got a brand new 15th Doctor, played by African-born Scottish actor Ncuti Gatwa, and I apologise if I'm saying that wrong, and I'm really going to have to get used to saying that properly. But yeah, he's a brand new Doctor, and so far I quite like him. Admittedly, there's nothing in his appearances yet that's made me see him as the Doctor, but to be fair with some of them, that does take time. It took time with Capaldi, it took time with Smith, and I love those guys, so yeah, it might take some time for this guy, but so far I am enjoying him. The only time in the episode where not only does he feel like the Doctor, but it feels like he's giving his own identity, is during the part where there's a song sequence, which, yes, there's a song sequence in this, and for as silly as it is, to be honest, I really quite loved it. And there's a part where he interrupts the song and says, "Why did you stop singing?" And the band starts up again and he starts singing along with it. That was a really good moment. It not only felt like he was actually being the Doctor, but he was inputting his own identity into the role. I really like that bit. We also have the new companion, Ruby, who... she's okay. I mean, there's nothing really that much to say about her, but we're still early on here, but she seems like an okay companion. She does remind me a lot of Rose, but just doesn't stand out quite the same way she did. But yeah, I think there's definitely promise with her. In terms of the one part I don't like about this new direction, I really don't like the way the new sonic screwdriver looks. I'm okay with them going with it in a different way. I mean, as silly as the 13th Doctor's sonic screwdriver looked, I actually quite like that one, as sex toyish as it looked. But this doesn't even look like a screwdriver anymore, it looks like a back massager. And like I said, sometimes going in a different way works well, but I just look at it and I don't see something that stands out or screams Doctor Who at me. But that's a pretty minor issue, all things considered. Also, there's the plot of the episode, which, while it is good, it's more or less just a rip-off of Labyrinth, but in a way, I kind of like that, because it does do something different that we haven't normally seen from Doctor Who, and this time the effects are actually pretty impressive. It definitely seems like this time they're trying to make the effects look more realistic, which I prefer it when they look deliberately bad, or just try to look good but look bad, but here they actually do look quite impressive, and I'll give them credit there. So, yeah, those are the new episodes. There were some ups and downs, but overall I liked them. And what I like about how is that they are implementing seeds of potential future plot lines in there. They're not massively overdone, but they give you enough to speculate on what's actually going to happen. And Russell T Davies, while he does have a lot of faults as a writer, particularly in just how pious some of his characters can be, especially the Doctor, which thankfully in this he only did that once during the moment in the giggle, and it wasn't drawn on for very long, so yeah, hopefully he doesn't try doing that again. But he was basically the overall architect of bringing Doctor Who back to the masses back in the mid-2000s, and by and large he did a really good job with it, and if he can bring that same kind of craft he does to this new series, I think we might be on a good way. Stephen Moffat is still my favourite of the Doctor Who writers, but yeah, maybe Russell T might have been the best call to go back to, because, let's face it, he did bring a lot of new people into this franchise, and his run is still the most popular of the modern series, in general that is. So yeah, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Russell T as a writer, he does have his good points, and if he focuses on that, and less on the whole pious, I know better than everybody stuff, yeah, I think we might be on a good road. But let's see what I dematerialize into next time.